Good morning, Arnie Sherman. How are you?
Scott, today's a special day on our show.
Why?
Well, because, time flies when you're having fun, and this is our 1-year anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
You and I have now been together. I've had this, for our audience, I've had this fabulous co-host and co-pilot over this past year.
Thank you.
And we're going to start our second year with a great show today with Nick will be on, Nick Checota,
right,
who runs two fabulous venues here in Missoula. He runs the venerable Wilma Theater that's been around since 1921, and he also runs the Top Hat, which has been in operation since 1952, and he's really made them into first-rate 21st century music venues, and so we're excited to have him on. But I wanted to reminisce a little bit. This past year,
right,
we've had some really interesting guests and a good cross-section. We had a good mix between people with a Montana identity, and then we've had people that have a national following on our show as well.
Absolutely.
So we just not all of them, because we've had over 50 guests this past year.
Is that right?
Yeah, we
50?
have. Yeah, we've had over 50 guests.
Wow.
When we started off with Darko Buterick, who is the maestro of the Missoula Symphony, and we had Margot Kidder, the actress. We had Governor Schweitzer, Mayor Engen, former Congressman Pat Williams. So we had a few political people. We had some national people like Peter Goltz, who ran National Transportation Safety Board, and Steve Hayes, who ran the Corporate Council on Africa. We had Harry Waterstone, my uncle, who was a Guadalcanal veteran and a veteran of Lou Gehrig's final goodbye at Yankee Stadium. We had Dominic Chianese, your great good friend, and very, very interesting show on Sopranos and his background. We had sports figures like Mark Mariani and Jordan Tripp.
Right.
Who, Tripp's now with the Seattle Mariners, and Mark is back with the
Seahawks. Right.
Yeah, Seattle Seahawks, excuse me.
Right.
And Mark's with the Titans. We had musician Scott Kirby, who's from Key West, and a good Jimmy Buffett, contemporary. We had Eden Atwood, our local jazz singer. She's now back on the circuit. She'll be performing in Denver on December 11th.
Is that right?
Yeah, we had one of the top chefs in America, Jacob Leatherman, who is down at Triple Creek Ranch. We had Eileen Waterstone, Steve Martin's administrative, assistant and president of his production company for the last 27 years, and I can go on and on. But that's a pretty good, inventory and
absolutely
of people that
for Missoula.
Yeah, for a little old college town radio station, that's pretty good.
I love it.
And Missoula is, as we're going to find out, talking with Nick, is really becoming a vibrant music hub in the Pacific Northwest. It's becoming a little bit like, our version of Austin, Texas, or Nashville.
Sure.
I mean, all the, the big acts that have come in here, in the last few years, people like the Rolling Stones and Elton John and Paul McCartney and Pearl Jam. And then, at the smaller venues, we've had almost every big national act.
Well, you just saw Sharon Jones and Trombone Shorty.
Yeah, Sharon Jones and Trombone Shorty was here.
Ryan Adams. I saw Ryan Adams at the
was
Wilma.
Here. Lakeshore Dive, which is a great act, has been here a couple of times.
And he just had Slayer. Okay.
Slayer.
And you ask him about Slayer. Slayer was a great crowd.
Slayer's a great crowd. The Rocky Horror Show is going to be here live.
Yeah.
So we're getting a really good
good
mix for a town like this, and I'm anxious to talk with Nick about what is in store for the future for Missoula.
Right. Well, I think he's going to be a great guest. Nick is, he puts his money where his mouth is, and I think this interview we'll have with him will reveal a lot of what his plans are, but also how he got here. How did he decide on Missoula? Right. Why Missoula?
I mean, he's a national guy. He went to school at Vanderbilt, got an MBA. He worked for Price Waterhouse Cooper. I mean, he was a finance real estate guy who decided to come to Missoula and take over the two most high-visibility private venues, clubs in town,
Right.
and has made them into more than anybody thought they could be.
Absolutely. And just for our listeners, when you listen to this show, Arnie's on the phone. He's actually calling into this interview, which was nice that we can do that from time to time if you're out of town on business or on traveling. But the show must go on.
Sometimes my parole officer requires that I am there in person, and I can't be on the air.
But the show must go on. And the show you're listening to is What Do You Know? On Newstalk KGVO. Arnie and Scott hosting. We'll be back right after this with Nick Checota from the Wilma and the Top Hat on What Do You Know? After this. I want to welcome Nick Checota to What Do You Know here on Newstalk KGVO. How you doing, Nick?
I'm good.
Great
Nick,
to have
welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let me ask you a question just to kick this off. You are now running two of the most venerable landmark music establishments in Missoula, if not Montana. But as I understand it, you don't have a history in the entertainment business. So what brought you to the point to acquire these two properties and make them 21st century music venues?
Yeah, my background's in real estate. I developed real estate for about 15 years before we moved to Montana. I developed real estate in Wisconsin, or out of Wisconsin, all over the country. I built, of all things, medical office buildings for Catholic hospital systems around the country. So it was quite a different business. And my wife's from Montana, and we decided that it was time for us to move to Montana, raise our family here, and she wanted to be closer to her parents and her family. So I sold out of my business, and we picked up and moved out here. And I started, when I first moved to Montana, I actually developed the building that Plunk is in.
Right.
And Plunk, I didn't own any of the business, just the real estate. And when I finished that, we took a look at the Top Hat was for sale, and I initially piqued my interest just as a piece of real estate, but I've always been a huge music fan. And as I dug into it a little bit, I thought this is a huge opportunity and a really cool brand and a great business, and that instead of developing it as just a piece of real estate, we decided to dive into the music business and take it on as a venue.
And what year is that?
That was 2012. October of 2012 is when I bought it, and then we ran it as is for 2 months, just so I could kind of get my head around it, and then we shut down and reopened in March of 2013.
And then how did you come to acquire the Wilma? For our listeners, I think they pretty much know that the Wilma has been a landmark institution in Missoula since 1921. It was named after the opera artist Edna Wilmer, and had seen better days, I think, when you got your hands on it.
Yeah, we were going head to head with the Wilma in a lot of respects. We were bringing a lot of artists into the Top Hat that, frankly, didn't belong in the Top Hat. They were probably too big and should have been Wilma plays, but we were just competitive by nature, and we were trying to grab those artists and bring them over to us. And I think as that situation that was going on at the Wilma, I think the current owner was having some struggles with the operations, and they decided that it was time for them to move on and get out of the business, and it was a natural fit for us to go in. And I got to know the owner a little bit, and we felt it was a great fit for what we were already doing at the Top Hat. To have both rooms and to be able to grow into the Wilma seemed great for us as a business, and it seemed great for the owner to restore that building back to what it should be.
What are the capacities of the two venues?
Top Hat's 600 fully standing for a show, and the Wilma is 1,500 fully standing.
So you're able to really attract a pretty broad audience of performers, having both of those available.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, we can get bands as they're coming up and bands as they're going down, and we can put them in the Top Hat, and kind of when they're peaking, we have them in the Wilma. And the Wilma's really nice because it can be seated. We redid the Wilma in a way that allows us to either seat the main floor or stand the main floor. So I can go all the way down to a seated show with an Emmylou Harris at, let's say, 850, or go all the way up to a standing room show of 1,500 with Slayer. So a lot of flexibility in that room, and we actually use a lot of it for private events as well, weddings and fundraisers and other banquet type of events.
So you knew real estate and you knew finance and you were a music aficionado, but you didn't know about sound systems and acoustics and all of that. How'd you learn about that part of the business?
Just live and learn, I guess. I just taught myself as we went, and you know, so much of the music business in venue management is real estate. I don't know if people realize that, but you're managing a big building all of the time, and both those buildings needed major overhauls to bring them up to a level of what we wanted to do in them. So my real estate background was quite beneficial and let me not only acquire them at a good price, but also redo them at a really good price. I general contracted both buildings myself, which really saved a lot of money and let us make the numbers work in those buildings.
Well, you did a great job with those buildings, but I understand, I think in the Top Hat, or was the Wilma, or maybe both, you put in a sound system that's like $100,000 sound system. So, Nick, you knew about real estate, you knew about finance. How'd you learn about putting in a sound system? I understand the sound system that you have in there is over $100,000. Who gave you direction on that?
You know, we did a lot of research on our own. It was I talked to a lot of different people around the country. We interviewed all the major front of house PA and soundboard manufacturers and brought them all in and just did a lot of comparisons. I worked with a couple local people too that were really helpful in the process, but I wish it only cost $100,000. The sound system in the Wilma was about $850,000.
Wow,
that's incredible.
Well, it sounds terrific. I was just there for the Trombone Shorty and Sharon Jones concert, and that was amazing.
Yeah, Trombone Shorty really pushed that system. He likes it loud, and he had that thing turned way up.
Sounded good to me.
Yeah, tell me what does the industry say when they hear with the sound system? What's their feedback?
Oh, they're blown away. I mean, we don't just say this because we own the Wilma.
Right.
It's in the top 5 sound systems for an under 3,000 cap room in the United States. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Wilma is the Top Hat's a little bit more mainstream, but still one of the better ones in the Northwest. But the Wilma, there's only a couple of rooms in the country that have better gear than the Wilma.
Well, what drove you to spend that type of money for the Wilma? Was it just a question of if we're going to be known for something, we want to be known for great venue, great crowd, and great sound?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, sound is. I have 2 customer bases when I think about who we serve, and one is our concert goers, and the other is the artists. And I feel like the previous management and also just other venues around the country, frankly, most promoters around the country, they don't pay a close enough attention to that concert goer experience. It's more about just getting them in and getting them to drink alcohol, and it's not about creating this great music experience. And they don't really think about the artist and the production to the same degree. Mm-hmm. So we put a lot of money into the green room. We cook everything, all the hospitality's made at the Top Hat from scratch. The sound system was superior. So when the artist walks into that room, they know this is a artist-centric room that was built for production and built with great to produce great sound and can meet all their needs.
Did you get a chance to go visit venues in maybe similar towns like the Orange Peel and Asherville or Belly Up and Solana Beach or any of those kind of places?
Yeah, I went to all of the above. I also, I went to a lot of rooms that I felt were very similar to the Wilma. So like the Boulder in Boulder, Colorado, the Boulder Theater.
Right.
And most interestingly to me was the Fox Theater in Oakland, California. Mm-hmm. The Fox is the Wilma, just double the size. It's the exact proscenium. It's the same. We copied there. I shouldn't say copy, but we
modeled after
their
emulated.
Thank you. That's the word. We emulated their tiering, the stage heights, how they brought the bars into the room. We felt that they're one of the venues that really gets it. And it's just a beautiful room. It's also an early 20s kind of vaudeville type house, or not vaudeville, but but a very similar proscenium type of room.
So I've been around Missoula for 20 years, and I always thought it was a pretty good music town, had a vibrant music scene, but it looks like it's getting stronger and stronger all the time. Is that a good, perception of what's going on?
Yeah, I think it is. The capacity and the appetite for music in Missoula just blows us away continuously. I mean, to just give you 2 examples, when Sturgill Simpson went on sale at the at the Wilma. We sold that show out in 6.5 minutes. That's
crazy.
It's crazy. We were the fastest venue in the United States to hit 1,500 tickets. Now, that show sold well all over the country, but no room sold as fast as the Wilma in the United States, and that includes all the primary markets, the big markets. You take that, and then you take a look at, we did 16 shows in 18 days, and not a single one of those shows, other than the Zappa show, sold less than 1,000 tickets.
Is that right?
So, I mean, that's an amazing appetite for music in a town that's of our size.
Well, let's ask the question. I mean, where's the audience coming from? Because it's not just coming from Western Montana, right?
No, I mean, it's definitely coming. We know it comes from We're looking at our digital ticket sales, which is our best read of where the audience is coming from. We know we draw from Spokane. We know we draw from Calgary, Sandpoint. We know we draw from Bozeman, a little bit from places like Boise, but definitely from like Moscow, Idaho, and
right.
Idaho Falls. So we see the ticket sales in all those markets. So
people are willing to come 4 or 5 hours. In the case of Calgary, almost 8 hours for a show.
Oh yeah, we actually have people fly over from Seattle and Portland because they prefer the venue.
Is that right?
And we're getting some artists that those markets aren't getting, but. I think it's the overall experience that they get when they come to Missoula. Missoula is a super cool town. They come, they stay, they have a good time in the city, and the venue we like to think is the nicest venue in the Northwest. So it's this great overall experience, and people are definitely flying over from Portland and Seattle, among other places.
How have your fellow downtowners embraced kind of you bringing more music into town?
I think the restaurants and bars love us.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at most our shows, my strategy with the Top Hat and to a lesser degree with the Wilma was to go after probably the older demographic more so than the previous promoters in town did. And as a result, these people that come to our shows tend to be older, tend to have more money, tend to be the type of person that's going to go out to dinner prior to the show.
Right.
They maybe don't party as much after the show and hit the bars after, but the spend prior to the show is way up. So,
are you booking yourself?
Yeah, I do. I personally do all the booking and oversee operations, and then I have marketing and operations people that do the day-to-day.
Right. And we have, on the 8th of November for a few nights, we're going to be doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Not the 8th of November. We're actually doing it this week. It's Halloween week. Yeah, so it's this Friday and Saturday.
It'll be after our show airs, but still.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But, it's an interesting question because you're bringing a lot of music in, but there's also are there theater and comedic kind of outfits coming in and looking for a home as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do more comedy. That's on my list of things to grow.
Mm-hmm.
We do things like the Rocky Horror. We do films like Warren Miller and Big Sky Film Fest.
Right.
So, the room is multi-purpose. And then in December, we have, I think, 12 or 13 private events in December.
Right. You're doing some Sunday night football, aren't you?
Yeah, we only show Packer games, and that's at the Top Hat.
I wonder why.
But as already alluded to, I mean, you've had David Sedaris there, and he's packed the place out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the for us, I think there's two big markets for us to go after still. It's comedy is one, and country is another. We haven't quite figured out the country scene yet, but it's something I think there's demand for in Missoula.
Yeah, there certainly is. There's 5 country stations.
Yeah.
So one would think.
Yeah, the trick with country is you go from either the club level at the Top Hat level,
right,
or you're in the Adams Center. There isn't a lot of, that 1,500 capacity country shows like Chase Rice.
Right. So how does it work when like a Snoop comes to the Adams Center on December 6th? Are you going to be programming around that? Or, I mean, did you have enough time to figure that out? Or
I mean, I won't compete with the Snoop show, but I don't do a whole lot of hip hop in
right,
either of our rooms anyway. So I'm not too concerned about having to compete with it.
Or program around it, meaning your other days out. Is there something for that audience?
Yeah, we've done a little bit of that, like an after parties, right, and things. We find they have limited success. I assume our restaurant will do really well prior to the show because we're in somewhat close proximity, being downtown. But we probably won't do direct programming around that show.
Got it.
So how do you stay on top of what's popular and what's going to draw here? I mean, I take a look at the roster of who's coming to town, and I know I'm a different demographic than a lot of the concert goers, but I don't recognize half the names. How do you recognize them?
I do a lot of research. A lot of times you come home from, I'll come home from working at the Top Hat. It'll be 12 or 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're kind of amped up a little bit because of the type of concerts that you have, or just working in a venue like the Top Hat. And I take that time a lot, and I just sit and do research. Spotify is a huge source of research for me. And then I have 100 people that work for me. About 60 of them are under the age of 25. So
right.
They're a great source too.
They know what's happening.
Do folks in town, like the folks that book at the university and the ones who book out at Big Sky Brewery or even occasionally at the Osprey Stadium, do you all ever get together and kind of coordinate what you're doing, or do you just find out what's happening as it happens?
No, we don't coordinate. It's pretty competitive.
Right.
Who I do coordinate though with is the other independent venues in the Western United States. We're kind of a dying breed of owner. Most of these venues are now owned by larger chains, whether it's a Live Nation or an AEG, or to a smaller degree a Knitting Factory. Where the independents, whether it's the Boulder Theater or the Pink Garter or the Fox and some of these smaller, not smaller venues, but independently owned venues, we all get together on a biweekly basis and talk about what we're doing and talk about what we're seeing, talk about availability of artists coming through, that kind of thing.
Right. So you got a great menu at the Top Hat. You had not been in the restaurant business before. How did that come together for you?
It took me a while. Our original concept at the Top Hat was to do a tapas style menu. Mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty cool. I think Missoula didn't share my enthusiasm, and I think the tapas concept it didn't really take off. So we gradually shifted our menu. We still are what I call a scratch kitchen, meaning that we do everything in house. We don't do like Cisco fries and that kind of thing.
Right.
But so that was my main concept. I'm a big restaurant goer, so I kind of had the consumer side of it. But yeah, I'd never run a restaurant, and I definitely took me a year to figure that out. It's a different business.
Sure. Well,
right.
It's a pretty amazing undertaking. I mean, I'm very impressed, and the fact that you got into music venues, which in and of themselves are difficult. As Scott would know, and the restaurant business, which is also a grind in and of itself, and you've made both of them successful.
Well, I want to know what he did before he started those two things. So what, you're a frontiersman. You came out west. Well, what did you do before?
Well, I married a Westerner, so I don't know if that classifies me as a frontiersman.
That's how most people end up in Montana, by the way.
Try something different.
So I was I was a real estate developer, and I
where were you, in St. Louis?
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Where I grew up, and then I lived in Seattle. I have kind of a varied background. Right out of school, I went into consulting, doing management consulting, and then I went and got an MBA from Vanderbilt University in Nashville. And went back into consulting, mostly Fortune 50 kind of merger and acquisition and strategy consulting. And then at some point, I shifted away from that and went into real estate development. And I did that for about 12 years, and it was focused mostly on the medical field, which is, interestingly, about 85% of medical buildings or hospitals around the country are owned by Catholic health systems, like Providence.
Sure.
And so most of the buildings I built were on campus. We would lease the land and build the buildings, and they were done in partnership with Catholic systems around the country. So you couldn't go from more of an extreme, going from building medical buildings for nuns to.
But Arnie, I'm looking at Nick, and I'm thinking to myself, how much of what you did before you how much planning and research and due diligence did you do before you even came to Missoula?
Not much. I mean, I've been coming here for years. My wife, from Great Falls, her two sisters have lived in Missoula for 25 years. They were both teachers here. And her mom, who had Alzheimer's at the time, we moved here. So we had a spent quite a bit of time here. So,
Well, you saw things moving in Missoula, and you were like, "I want to do that. I want to." How did you know that?
I mean, you could see Missoula was ripe for
Right.
it's just a great community, and it's got so much opportunity here, and it's growing, and it's the downtown is a vibrant downtown. I'm a downtown kind of person. I like being downtown.
Right.
So you could just see all of that and feel that in Missoula, where in other communities, 60, 70, 80,000 person communities, the downtowns are struggling.
Sure. Well, you also spent time when you got your MBA at Vanderbilt, so you were in Nashville, and I'm sure you took advantage of that music scene while you were there.
Oh, for sure. I grew up. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I went to a lot of Dead shows, and I'm a big Dead fan and got into the music scene that way. So,
What was your first show?
my first
Dead show.
My first Dead show was at Alpine Valley in '86.
I'm old. Arnie, we're older than he is.
Yeah.
I'm 81. The Rack, Rutgers.
Well, that's my first Dead show.
No, what's your first? Right. So what's your first?
My first show was Tina Turner at Summerfest in the mid '70s.
Is that
I'm not even
right?
going to tell you.
is, with
I'm not even
my-
going to tell you
Was
what
that
my
the Keep
first
on
show
Trucking
was.
tour?
It's when she was wearing that super short black leopard dress, and that was
How
quite.
did you get to that show?
Oh, my parents took me to that show.
Did they really?
They did.
So they Ike and Tina Turner fans?
I don't know if they're Ike fans, but they were definitely Tina Turner fans.
So who would you like to bring to Missoula that you haven't quite snagged yet?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd
Alive,
love
too, by the way.
I'd love to bring Dead and Company to Missoula. I'd love to bring. I'd love to get the Allman Brothers back together, like in a real way, and bring them to Missoula.
With Dickie Betts?
Yeah, that would be something.
That would be magic.
So I'm a. Those would be my personal choices. But what you learn in the music as a promoter and owning venues is you don't necessarily bring what you want to bring.
Right.
You bring what's going to sell. I do think both those would
Those are
sell
two
really
good
well.
ones, right? There's two good bets there.
But
The
I
one that I've been impressed with lately is Lake Street Dive with Rachel Price, the lead singer. She's pretty awesome.
she's awesome. I just had her at the Wilma. Well, I've had her twice. I had her at the Top Hat a year and a half ago, and then she was at the Wilma this summer in mid-July.
Yes, that's a great concert. She was great.
She's great. Her voice is unbelievable.
Yeah. Did
What were you about to say? What were
she
you-
do Bohemian Rhapsody?
No, that was her encore.
That's awesome, isn't it?
It was awesome.
Who else were you thinking of? You're about to say something else after we said the Allman Brothers.
Oh, who was I going to say?
There's got to be someone on your wish list.
I'd like to see Ween in the full band. I brought
Right.
Aaron Freeman, and I'm bringing Dean Ween on Halloween. I think Ween would do very well in Missoula.
Sure.
Sturgill Simpson was high on my list, and I've been trying to get him for some time.
Right.
Alabama Shakes is one that I'd love to bring to Missoula.
I know their product manager. I know,
Do you? Yeah.
I know John. Hey, wait a minute. So how about Sturgill Simpson? Talk about that for a second. Arnie, do you have that record?
No, I don't, but I know I've heard Sturgill.
It's fantastic.
I think his new album is one of the best out there right now.
I mean, it's sublime. So how did you get him, and how did that? Was it just that you guys were sharing the talent among the independent theater?
no, it's actually.
How did you get him?
It's interesting you ask that because it's quite the opposite. That was a show where, we have, as a philosophy, have decided not to allow third-party promoters into either of our rooms.
Right.
And I do that for basically quality control. It's not a money thing because I probably make a little bit more money with the rental than I do with
Right.
doing it in-house. But I control the quality of the artist experience. I control how the customer experiences the venue. We control everything. And for us, that's the key.
Right.
So Sturgill Simpson was interesting because AEG bought almost every date on that tour. And they wanted to put holds on our calendar, and we instead insisted on putting our own offer in. And we were very concerned that we would lose it because AEG would just skip the market and route around us and convince the agent not to play Missoula. And in the end, the agent made the decision. I think we're the only non-AEG venue
Is that right?
on the tour.
Well, that begs the question. So you're dealing with a lot of folks in the industry, agents, buyers, etc. What's it like working with folks like that versus folks in your previous roles in consultancy? He's laughing, but I want to tell you because it's a tough negotiation.
I'm a real estate developer by training.
So you're a tough negotiator.
That's probably the construction and the development industry is probably as tough as any, I think.
So dealing with unions.
Yeah, I did, and I built buildings in Jersey City. I built buildings in Miami Beach. Oh yeah. So I mean, I think the development industry was a great training ground for this industry.
Sure.
We're making. I think. While Missoulians, I think, are really digging what we're doing and liking the venue and what they're getting. I think nationally, we've definitely made our share of enemies because we have our way of doing it, and it's not quite how everyone else is doing it, and being a closed room and not allowing promoters into the market.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. That can have its problems. What concert disappointed you the most that you thought was really going to be a great fit and didn't fit for Missoula?
Well, personally, or you're talking just performance-wise?
Performance-wise. Or you can do both, personally and performance-wise.
I was surprised that Dweezil Zappa didn't sell at all.
Right.
Because I thought that was a really cool... He's a cool artist. I'm a big Frank Zappa fan, and I felt like with all the lawsuit and everything that would perform better. And that underperformed. Personally, I had... and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I had high expectations for Thievery Corporation. A lot of hype around that show. It was the most expensive show I've bought in the fall here. And definitely of the shows that I have promoted was towards the bottom of my list.
What about it, though? Was it just...
the production wasn't there and the energy wasn't there. And it just didn't meet my expectations.
Sure. Isn't it interesting that, as we build this music community here and this becomes a much larger destination for music lovers as well as artists, not everybody knows what Missoula's about. They think it's a, backwater stop between Seattle and Salt Lake or wherever. Yeah,
I think that was, and not to beat up on one of my competitors, but I think that was probably the biggest challenge for promoters like the Knitting Factory or other big national promoters is this is not what you think it is.
Right.
Missoula is not a little hippie mountain town like Boulder was 20 years ago, which is the analogy you often hear. Missoula is a super sophisticated music-going town.
Right.
They like very hip and up-and-coming artists. They know their music. They know what's hot. A show like Glass Animals, sells out. That's a show that I think a lot of the national promoters would pass on in Missoula, but they just, I don't feel like they understand this market because it doesn't fit the stereotype that you think it's going to fit.
For example, I saw that Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are going to do 2 shows in Bozeman, and that kind of surprised me. I guess maybe because it's close to Billings and they think they can draw from there.
Yeah, I do think the country scene over in Bozeman and East is stronger than it is in Missoula, though I think that show would have done really well here.
Yeah.
Right.
I just also think it's, the national promoters are going to take this market and they're going to do what's safe and they're going to do what's done well in the past. So you see them repeat shows a lot, where we tend to be a little bit more risk assumptive. And I think living in this market, we have a really good sense of what's going to do well.
Let's do a quick ID. You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Our guest is Nick Checota. We're presented by Don Maddox, Glacier Sotheby International Realty. Nick Checota.
What I like about the 2 venues particularly is that it does cut across all demographics depending on who the artist is. You can see shows of very young people. You can go in there, and depending on the artist, people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s are in there for a concert. And that's great to see that in a town like ours.
Yeah, I think it's key. It's also key for me to be able to program 80 to 90 shows at the Wilma and another 80 shows at the Top Hat a year. You have to mix up the genres. A little bit less so at the Top Hat. I'm a little bit more genre specific over there and have a little bit more of an identity because there are other clubs in town of the size of the Top Hat that are doing some of those other genres.
Right.
In the Wilma level, I got to hit everything because we're really the only 1,500-ish size room, and I think that we just want to have an obligation to hit all the genres, but it just makes more sense there.
In the market, by the way, you're the only 1,500 seat venue within what? A couple 100 miles?
You have some in Spokane. Bozeman doesn't have one. Montana doesn't have another 1,500 cap room. You have the Babcock in Billings. which isn't really set up for
Right.
for concerts. You really don't have another comparable room in the state of Montana.
So how many shows do you, is it the 80 or 90 in each place that give you, the kind of cash flow that makes sense for the investment you have, or are you looking to even go beyond that?
No, I think we're at the level we want to be from a number of shows. I think it's just got to be really smart buy-in. So I make sure I maintain profitability on the actual show itself. The bar is where the main revenue comes from.
Right.
So, and then the restaurant and the catering and the private event space kind of fills in the gaps. So I think in the old Wilma, you saw these power months like we have in October, November, and February, March, April. But then you saw all of the revenue and profitability lost in the down periods, where we have been trying to program that room in those down periods with private events and weddings and still do some music, but not nearly the volume because the market's not there during those periods.
Sure. I think our listeners would be surprised in terms of how much, because people are always concerned about ticket price, how much of the ticket price goes to the artist and the artist team. Is it like all of it?
The vast majority of it. I mean, we the shows themselves, I mean, and I'm not going to say we don't make money on shows, but that is by no means where our main profits are made. I mean, the main profits are made on the bar and concessions and the ancillary revenue.
Have you ever, do you have recording equipment in each of the venues to where you can actually do, create some takeaways for the artists and for their production?
We do, yeah. We record most shows.
And are the artists leaving with that? Or
they are a lot of times. Yeah, we do soundboard recordings of almost every show.
Isn't that great? It's like Wolfgang's Vault.
We all listen to them in our office. We can't share them with the public because a lot of them we can't release per contract.
Have you noticed? I mean, you haven't been in the business that long. Have you noticed that the price for talent is going up?
I think it is. I feel like if you look at our ticket pricing, I mean, you got two pieces. You got the price of talent, you got ticket pricing. I think if you look at ticket pricing at the Wilma, it hasn't seen a big increase, except for when we bring these big shows in that are really expensive, which the old Wilma wasn't doing. So those ticket prices are going to be more. But I think overall that I do think that the price for talent has gone up. I think the industry's under massive change. And you're moving away from tours supporting albums to a new model where albums are supporting tours.
Yeah.
So, you release an album and you tour around that album to make your tour more successful, where in the old days it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Arnie, Nick, do you read the Lefsetz letter?
Yeah, once in a while.
So, Arnie, do you read this?
No.
Bob Lefsetz, he's a former industry lawyer. He's out of L.A. He talked about everything relative to the music, touring industries. And he was looking at Spotify. And Spotify really is the new kind of, chart, right? How many plays does it get on Spotify? And if you look at that, that's a predictive model that'll say this is taking off, this is getting some momentum.
Sure. The days of Casey Kasem and Billboard it seems to me to be long gone.
Well, it's real time. Well, it's a real time monitor. But the interesting thing was he did a column yesterday, that being Tuesday or Monday, on Joanne, the Lady Gaga record.
Yeah,
right.
And he said it's a stiff.
Yeah,
just because she had her biggest, the profile track, the single, if you will, had only 38 million listens.
Yeah. Spotify is a huge factor in my buying. So when I'm putting together an offer and I'm trying to determine how many,
right?
We do everything from Facebook analytics to Polestar to things like Spotify. But it is definitely one of my 5 or 6 metrics that I use to determine how many tickets I think I'm going to sell in a market.
Right, but Spotify doesn't break it down by geographic area, does it?
It doesn't, but there are things like Facebook where I can, as a owner, I can get into the analytics of Facebook and I can really get a sense of how many people in Missoula, for instance, like a given artist,
right,
or like similar artists. So those are all the metrics that you use, and it does help quite a bit in buying talent.
That's interesting. I wonder if Spotify is going to start build off a separate product for things just like that, where you can get a deeper sense of set of analytics.
I think
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I think analytics are an opportunity, but if you look at the merger, I think one of the more interesting mergers is the merger of Ticketfly with Pandora.
Sure.
You start to think about promotional opportunity and management of that channel. I mean, you have a ticket company trying to sell tickets, and they are merged with a digital platform, a radio platform, essentially, that can tell what is being listened to in a given market. So I think that's a pretty powerful acquisition.
So Missoula has a number, of venues. In the right time of the year, you have the football stadium, you have the baseball stadium for outdoor concerts. You got some indoor venues on the campus. I think 1,500 seat, 900 seat, or whatever. You got your two sites. You got what Big Sky Brewery does out there. I think is there something that's missing in town? Is there something that we're not covering?
I wish we had a great outdoor venue, like an amphitheater outdoor venue, like something like the Gorge or a Red Rocks. Big Sky serves its purpose, but it's not an amphitheater.
Right.
I think I'd love to see that. I'd love to see a venue not only that was outdoors but accommodated camping. Because then I think you could start to get into a little bit of a festival play, which I think Missoula would be a pretty cool
absolutely
venue or location for a festival. So we don't really have that camping site. And then the Adams Center is a great venue, but it's really not designed for music.
No, it's not.
And so, Missoula really could use, I don't know if it gets enough play, but it would be great to have that 3,000 to 10,000 capacity place where you could see bigger names that we just don't have, that the Field House in Bozeman does seem to be utilizing more.
You know what it is, Arnie? We got to go out to Potomac. You got to go up north to Potomac. You got to go west and up 200 to find any parcels of land large enough.
Right. Well, the problem is going to be on that is the economics. How many months a year it's going to be dormant because of weather issues.
Yeah, it is the problem. So I think it would be great to have. I don't see it coming anytime soon, just because I don't think the economics are there.
Let's do a quick ID and a break, and we're going to come back with our final segment with Nick Checota. You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, presented by Dawn Maddox, Glacier Sotheby International Realty. Back after this. We're back with Nick Checota in our final segment here on What Do You Know, presented by...
So Nick, we have an entertainment management program at the University of Montana. Does that dovetail in with what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's a great program, and as we look at our staffing for the Wilma and the Top Hat, which is really, if you look at our entertainment staff, we're going to sell between the two rooms something in the neighborhood of 75 to 80,000 tickets this year. That's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 or $8 million. So it's a full-on operation. And we need good qualified people to run box office and to run marketing for our whole operation and to run operations of the venues. And all of our entertainment staff has come out of that program.
Well, that's good. That's a great plug for the university because everybody likes that program. And this is proof of the pudding by you hiring them and they're doing well for you. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I wish the program would continue to invest and grow it. I think it's a super interesting program for the university. I think it's one of those kind of sexy recruitment type of programs that could really help the university get a little bit of an identity within the industry.
Do you ever see yourself actually stepping out of programming your two venues and being a promoter to, let's say, the stadium or some other venue in and around here?
Most definitely.
Ha! See? Good answer.
We're already doing that. We're doing a show. We haven't announced it yet on February 28th in Bozeman, and we're going to be doing a number of shows this summer in Missoula.
Fantastic.
It seems to me, just from being around here a long time, we've had the Rolling Stones and Elton John a couple of times, and Pearl Jam and Paul McCartney, but I think we could do a lot more of those kinds of shows. I think the appetite is here for bigger shows like that on a more regular basis.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, it's interesting. So the building blocks of that are the shows that we were having every day at the Wilma and the Top Hat, right? To just continue to build Missoula as a music city. And I'm curious to know, what do you think about the future? What are you looking to do to try to attract more talent and bring bigger names and I guess other productions to town?
Well, I think you're already kind of seeing it. I mean, you're seeing one local band like Little Smokies start to emerge, which helps our reputation when you see a band come out of a town like Missoula. You're starting to hear people say it's the Austin of the Northwest. And I think you're starting to see artists want to route here because, fortunately for us, we live in a beautiful area. So it's a place that artists want to come to.
Right.
I think you have all of these great things going on. I mean, we like to think that we've built these 2 great rooms that will attract and help promote artists. You have the entertainment management program within the university that is sending, almost the entire volunteer staff at Polestar is the University of Montana students.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's probably 80% of the volunteers are UM students in the entertainment management program.
Wow.
So you have that going on, and I just think you start to, all these little things start to work together. You have what the Big Sky folks do out at Big Sky, which is bringing more music in an outdoor setting. You have this beautiful ballpark that's underutilized that could be doing a lot more music. So you have all these different places. You have great venues. You have an education program. You have a local music scene that's starting to get a reputation. We really feel like all that's coming together. And in the Northwest, we're kind of this little gem, I feel like, from a music standpoint that it could definitely grow and attract business. And I think entertainment and music could be one of the main components that puts Missoula even more on the map.
You make a really strong point. There are a lot of other college campus communities that don't have what we have. I've been on a number of them, and they just don't have enough of the infrastructure or enough of the diversity or whatever that they don't build a big music, community.
That's
places
right.
like Miami of Ohio, or even Ann Arbor, and places like that. Columbus, Ohio, you don't have that sort of same environment as you have here.
No, I think what's interesting is Missoula is such a unique opportunity, a unique community, because you just mentioned Ann Arbor. Let's take that. You're too close to Chicago.
Right.
You're too close to another major market where if I want to go drive, I can go drive and see that big artist. Missoula is got enough of a kind of feverish, adamant music growing, or a really strong music loving crowd, and you combine that with it, we're 7 hours from the next major market, whether it's Seattle or Denver or Seattle or Salt Lake.
Nick, where are you going to tell this story? Because I think what you're saying is absolutely true, right? You have this great thing happening here, but where do you need to go to tell the story about Missoula?
I think conferences like Polestar and you mentioned Billboard earlier. I mean, I think those are the conferences where it's just building awareness with agents, but the awareness is kind of building itself. I mean, we're an aggressive buyer with the sole objective of bringing music to Missoula, which again I like to set us apart from other promoters in the community. And what makes us different is that's our only objective: bring good music to Montana. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I spend all day, every day doing, is trying to figure out how do I convince agents to bring music to this community. And I think that will also start to cause more and more music to come because, as they start to see the My Morning Jackets and the Grace Potters and the Glass Animals and the Slayers play these rooms, people are going to start to take note. It's a matter of time. And the more we do it, the more agents and the more buzz there is within the industry. But it's all about the industry. It's not about the concert goers. The concert goers will come if you bring great music. Right. The industry has to start to see Missoula as a place like the Orange Peel in Asheville or like Austin, where there's just this something's going on there, and they see that, and I feel like that's happening already. It is happening, and you have a lot to do with it, and we're glad you're here doing it. What a great guest! You've been a delightful guest, and how do people find out more about what you're doing? You want to give your website or? Yeah, either for the Top Hat shows, you go to tophatlounge.com, and for the Wilma, it's thewilma.com. and that lists all our shows at those two websites.
And we have a vast audience that's not just here in Missoula, but it's nationwide. And if they want to talk to you about talent and any other like industry-related things, how should they get in touch with you?
Just go to either of the websites and go to our booking link, and they can reach me through the booking link.
Terrific.
Beautiful, Nick.
Nick, thank you. We enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Our guest was Nick Checota, head of the Wilma and the Top Hat and the music scene here in Missoula. And you're listening to What Do You Know, presented by Dawn Maddox, Glacier Sotheby International Realty. Arnie, I'm sorry you had to come in via phone, but
it worked out good.
It worked out beautifully.